Good evening and welcome to the April 7th, 2025 meeting of the East Bridgewater Board of Health. We have a couple presentations today, but we will first jump into action items. First off, we have invoices. We need to vote on approval of Eric Badger's invoice in the amount of $1,400 for health agent counseling services. Do we have any discussion on that? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
All right. And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is approved. Next, we have a vote to approve an invoice for Robert Casper in the amount of $500, also for health agent consulting services. Any questions on that one? Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the invoice for $500 for Mr. Casper. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is approved. Next up, we have minute meetings from the March 17th, 2025 meeting. If you guys had a chance to read?
Yes.
Yep. All right. I will make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, those are approved. Next, we've got 2025 permit renewals. First, a vote to approve a renewal installer license for P&L Custom Homes and Excavating, LLC. Installer Robert Source. I will entertain a motion to approve Mr. Soares and P&L Custom Homes.
I'm sorry, yes, the application's complete.
Do we do these normally as a group, or we're going to do one at a time, right?
You do them individually, please.
They're different categories, yeah. All right, so actually, I'll make a motion to approve P&L Custom Homes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Okay.
All right, and any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is approved. Next, we've got a vote to approve a mobile food permit application for South Shore Smokehouse, Local Larry's Tacos, Lolly Jolly Waffles, Ellie's Treats LLC, and Casey's Curbside Bistro, as well as South Shore Taco Guy.
Applications are complete.
All right. Applications are all complete. I will move to approve the mobile food permits. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then one more, we've got a vote to approve tanning operation permit for Club X Fitness.
And that application's complete.
All right. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
All right,
Second.
second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is approved. Next, we move to the Bridge Street landfill project. We are going to vote on approving an amendment to Weston and Sampson Engineers lettering agreement for licensing service proposal fee to appoint John Haynes as project manager responsible for overseeing construction and approving invoices. Any discussion on that one?
Just, are we voting A and B separately?
They're separate. So the amendment is just for an increase in dollar amount, and it already went in front, and the town administrator, we have the funding
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
So it's just an amendment that just needs to be signed for paperwork. And then the second, Tom, you can talk to
Yeah,
that.
so we had a meeting with the group that is, overseeing the project. And basically, we can do it one of two ways. We can appoint John and the DPW to basically oversee the project and give them authority to approve the invoices. This is basically a single fee job, so hopefully we'll be getting basically one invoice for the full job. Last I'm aware, he was hoping to get out and start work today.
And he actually sent an email around that they did start work today.
Okay, so they have actually started the work. He estimated about 4 weeks for completion, pending weather and, any mishaps. So hopefully we'll have one single invoice. If not, there'll be a second invoice for whatever work remains to be completed at the end of the month. And either we can delegate John to approve those, or they can come before the board. And then I guess just defer to John in terms of the completion of the work in the field.
So, Mr. Chair, if you could do a motion on A separate
Yeah.
from B, please?
All right, so I will make a motion to approve the amendment number 1 to the Weston and Sampson Engineers letter agreement. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion on just Part A? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that is passed. And then on Part B, any thoughts,
I
concerns?
think that's the obvious.
I mean, I think that's the easiest one. It's gonna be pretty much a matter of either the job is complete at the end of the month, or 75% of the job is complete. We'll pay that, and then once they finish, the last invoice is just to wrap it up. So I think it's just as easy to have him authorized to do both. Any other thoughts? All right, well, I will make a motion to approve John Haynes and DPW as project manager responsible for overseeing the project and granting him authority to approve the invoices. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that passes. And then we have one disposal system construction permit approval to 25 West Union Street, East Bridgewater, by Zenith Consulting Engineers, LLC. And we've got a few variances up before the board. We have a guest to present on this one.
Good evening. For the record, now is Ziegler from Zenith. I'm just going to grab my easel.
Yep,
Sorry.
take your time.
Yeah.
It's right here, okay?
That should be good.
All right. So again, Niall Zager from Zenith Consulting Engineers. I'm the engineer on the project. This is an existing two-family dwelling, very tight piece of property. Really not a lot of room to go. We did the perk test. We attempted to do the perk test. Couldn't do the perk test. It was too wet at the time. We ended up having to do a sieve analysis, which is one of the things we had to do here. We're requesting as a local upgrade. But essentially what we're proposing here is an advanced treatment unit inside the septic tank, which is called a microfast 0.5 microfast treatment unit. That essentially allows a reduction in the footprint of the leaching field to 50% from a conventional system because of the actual treatment of it. It was actually pretty similar to what was done next door on the abutting property. This has to go under the driveway, so we had to keep the elevation down as much as possible. We had, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to access the property. So we proposed, we have the treatment unit, we have a 1,500 gallon or 2,000 gallon pump tank, and then we have the leaching field that's under the driveway. And that's being reduced in order to, like I said, be able to pave over it. We are proposing Schedule 80 pipe over, in the leaching field to allow for vehicle traffic. And I can go through all the local upgrades with you if you like. Essentially, the first one is a reduction in the required setback between the leaching field and the property line from 10 feet to 5 feet, which is the abutting property. I did provide notification of that, notification to that abutter. We are also asking for a reduction to the required setback between the leaching field and the property line from West Union Street, which is obviously a town-owned piece of property, so you're being notified based off of this filing. A reduction from the septic, from the leaching field to the cellar wall from 10 feet to 5 feet. We're proposing a liner in between. That's kind of a good engineering practice when you're too close to it. We are at, obviously, like I said before, the sieve analysis in lieu of the perk test because it was too wet at time of the perk. We only were able to dig one hole out there. We would have had to dig 2 holes. We would have had to dig in the driveway, and there was people parked there. We're just trying to limit what will end up happening is we'll have to do an open hole at time of construction. Once it's fully opened up, we'll go out there, myself and Eric or whoever else is available, go out there, inspect, make sure it is, kind of generally what we found when we were out there. And if there's any changes that need to be made, we'll deal with that then. Reduction in the size of the field, like I said, 50%, that is allowed by the microfast advanced treatment remedial use approval. A reduction from 4 feet to 2 feet to water table, again, that's allowed under the remedial use approval for the microfast. And then a reduction on the 5-foot overdig because we just don't have the room. We went to 3 feet. So those are the big ones. Luckily, we were able to even fit this in there. The fact of the matter is obviously you've got a 2-family. There's a good amount of flow there, and this is really without elevating and doing something while doing the tight tank. There's really not many other options here. So we feel as though it's obviously a huge improvement from what's there now, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
I think that makes, everything you said makes sense with, what you're working with, especially with the driveway there and stuff, so. Any other questions from you guys?
Just that the health agent will confirm soil removal setback distances and final installation before backfilling. So you signed off on this, so Eric, you'll be taking a look, okay, all right.
Like he said, I want to ensure that if anything different from the sieve analysis soils or the percolation test that wasn't performed because they're restricted area, you got to make sure that the soils are consistent with what the sieve analysis stated. And if they're not, we usually will take another sample and do a quick lab result, hopefully within the 24-hour period.
So just, my concern is that we have the same set of eyes on the project from beginning to end. I know we're you guys are helping us out as best you can, which we
Yeah, I'll help
appreciate.
you out with whatever you guys need.
So just,
It's noted, I noted it to make sure that it goes out to Eric.
Okay.
when They call for the bottom.
very good.
And I like to see the open holes for myself. I'm as the engineer. I was the one that performed the soil evaluation out there with the previous agent. So I'm familiar with what was there. So I can meet with Eric out there and go over it and make sure that we're on the same page because, it's my license. I want to make sure it's right,
Okay.
of course.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we have a unique situation right now, so
Oh, I understand.
make sure that the same eyes are working the same projects.
I think that makes
Yep,
sense.
we get you covered.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I would make a motion to approve the local upgrade for 25 West Union. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Last chance for questions. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Are approved.
Guys, have a great night.
Thanks for coming in. All right, next, we have a discussion of the MBTA Community Zoning Bylaw.
By chance, did anyone share the slides with you ahead of time?
We haven't got
Charlie?
anything,
No?
no.
Okay, I have a thumb drive, not sure if we can set it up here, but I'll just work on off my slides regarding the talking points, and then I can share the slides with whoever is
Okay,
interested
you
in
could
getting
forward
them.
them to me and then I can send them to the board.
Following. So just by way of introductions, my name is Jason DeRozier. I'm the Senior Planner for Housing and Public Engagement with Old Colony Planning Council. Old Colony Planning Council, or OCPC, is the regional planning agency for 17 municipalities, sort of on the South Shore and southeastern Mass. So the coastal communities, Plymouth, Kingston, Duxbury, down through Pembroke, Plimpton, Halifax, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, the Bridgewaters, sort of around Brockton, Avon, Stoughton, sort of like that general area. We've been pulled in to help support the town of East Bridgewater on their second attempt at passing MBTA communities. As you might remember, it was voted down at special town meeting last year due to the SJC decision regarding the state and the town of Milton, that lawsuit. Towns who had not previously adopted or were in compliance with MBTA communities have a second attempt to try to pass it or pass it, because there's a number of communities that haven't passed it yet.
Okay, was that in the SJC's ruling?
Yes.
That the towns have to vote again, or can?
They don't have to, they can choose to.
They can vote again.
So there's a number of communities that voted it down that are not seeking to come into compliance. East Bridgewater and Duxbury are two that have decided to at least try again, to see if they can alter plans and make it work. So East Bridgewater is considered an adjacent community because East Bridgewater is surrounded or essentially landlocked by 5 communities that are served by the MBTA. So you have those community categories of commuter rail, which around East Bridgewater is Brockton, Whitman, Hanson, Halifax, and Bridgewater. So that puts East Bridgewater into the adjacent community category. The MBTA community's requirements. The basic requirements for East Bridgewater under the state guidelines is that multifamily as of right at approximately 15 units per acre. I have a couple of slides later where it shows where there's already development or long-standing housing stock that fits the 15 units per acre sort of requirement already in town. The district must be of a reasonable size. For East Bridgewater, that means a minimum land area of approximately 50 acres. This area that's being zoned or potentially rezoned in East Bridgewater is above the 50-acre requirement. And then no age restrictions or limits on unit size, number of or size of bedrooms, or number of occupants. So one common misconception, and I think the important piece that's part of this conversation about MBTA communities and the unit capacity is that this is not a housing production target. It's essentially a zoning exercise. Now, there are communities that will rezone, which will spur development. And there's other communities that will rezone for multifamily housing that might not see housing as part of this for many, many years, if ever. And so the town does not have to produce any units. It just has to zone to allow housing production. And so the way that the minimum unit capacity for East Bridgewater or for MBTA communities was figured is that it looked at the 2020 housing units based on the census, how many units a community has. So in 2020 census, East Bridgewater had just over 5,200 units of housing, 5,211. So therefore, 14% of those units were sort of targeted for MBTA communities rezoning, which essentially is 750 units, and the minimum density requirement is 15 units per acre for 50 acres.
Let's go over some of those numbers. We have 5,200 houses in East Bridgewater.
Yep.
14% of them, you said, were not targeted.
Should be considered sort of zoned for multifamily. So they took 14% of the 2020 census housing units for your minimum unit capacity. So if you divide 5211 by 14%, it gives you roughly 750. The number is rough.
Okay, so we're saying 750 units should be part of multifamily.
For the zoning capacity, but as you'll see or would see from the slides regarding the zoning area that the town is looking at, you would never get 750 units there. You might, and I don't want to give like an approximation or a number, but you would not come close to that number.
Okay, that 750, does that include existing multifamilies that are already in East Bridgewater?
It could.
It could,
Yes.
okay.
And I'll talk about what parcels are in sort of the area that they're looking to rezone. So again, important to note, the law does not require that multifamily housing be built. The law only requires towns to zone for multifamily housing so that it can be built in select areas. It does not matter what has been built or what will be built. All that matters is the underlying zoning or the zoning overlay as it relates to MBTA communities. If anything gets built, the actual density may be less than 15 units per acre, given a number of constraints, given the parcel or the parcels, the area that East Bridgewater is looking at. A majority of it is wetlands. You can't build anything. And so those constraints will limit the amount that you're able to build. 3A, and you might hear me sort of use MBTA communities and 3A interchangeably. Essentially, it's the same thing. MBTA communities is sort of the legislative name for it, based on the legislation. 3A refers to Section 3A of Mass General Law 40A, which is the state's zoning code, the zoning enabling act for the state. 3A is not an affordable housing law. The law does not require affordable units to be built as part of it. The law does not require communities pay for any infrastructure to support housing development. It's all up to the developers to provide any infrastructure improvements. If development is not feasible given current infrastructure, then no development will happen. And so that's a big piece to know. And then the law does not override the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act or Title V and septic requirements. So more.
I just ask a question on the infrastructure
Sure.
piece. So can you provide an example of where infrastructure is not sustainable or supportable for a development?
Yep. If, I don't know, town water and sewer aren't available. So I'm thinking about Plimpton, for example. Plimpton is an MBTA communities, has to comply with MBTA communities by the end of this year. Plimpton has a lot of constraints, somewhat maybe similar to some constraints in East Bridgewater. And so if a developer does not want to or is constrained by additional septic treatment or septic systems, development is not feasible, development will not happen. If a town is not served by water or, again, sewer, wetlands are a constraint.
Well, we are served by water, obviously, but are there any constraints or limitations that?
For East Bridgewater specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at sort of what those could be. We're going to be having I'm working with the town of East Bridgewater to host a town forum, a public forum at the Council on Aging on April 23rd. I'll have a lot more of that information then because I'm still working through some of the scenarios and some of the zoning constraints. I'll have a much more detailed sort of analysis of what that could look like. But thank you for bringing that up. I'll make sure to sort of have those examples. So if we're able to show this, again, I'll share the slides. Essentially, it's what does 15 units per acre look like, which if you're not in zoning, can be hard to sort of imagine. I think when you hear 15 units per acre, you sort of go to, you might think of larger scale sort of multifamily residential development. That's not necessarily what 15 units per acre looks like. I have some scenarios here, but essentially exploring residential density in East Bridgewater where you already have buildings that round out to essentially 15 units per acre. 85 North Central Street is a two-family dwelling. It has 2 residential units. The parcel acreage is less than an acre. It's 0.11 acres. And so the units per acre on that particular parcel is 18.36. So it's a 2-family home. It's well above the 15 units per acre. So essentially, as part of your MBTA communities, you could have a number of these 2 families, which essentially look on the surface as a single family. There's one door. You could comply with MBTA communities just by building a number of these. Or 31 West Union Street, it's an apartment with 48 units. It has 5 residential units. It sits on a parcel that's 0.14 acres. Parcel density for this particular unit is 35.97. So this is well above double of what you would be building as part of 15 units per acre. So essentially, where in East Bridgewater are we talking about? Again, I have a map here, but Winter Street to the east, North Bedford Street to the east, Winter Street to the west, and then bound by to the northern part by the Whitman Town line, down to through that area. So essentially the parcels, there are 11 parcels that are included in the proposed district. 2 of them are owned by the town of East Bridgewater. 3 of them are owned by JSC Holdings, which is the 40B development that was going through the Zoning Board of Appeals. 1 of them is Hornstra Farm, which, will remain Hornstra Farm for the foreseeable future, well into, and then 3 of them are owned by N-Star Electric, and then 2 of them are private ownership, single-family homes, one on Winter Street and one on North Bedford Street. So if you have this area zoned, you won't see any residential development for the foreseeable future just by who owns them. 2 single-family homeowners, Town of East Bridgewater, the 40B development, which has already, I believe, gotten their permits, Hornstra Farm, and N-Star Electric. And then, if you could see these maps, again, I will share them with you, but much of the land that is in the East Bridgewater 3A zoning area is wetlands or wetland buffer areas. And so, of those 11 parcels, half of them are wetlands, so you can't build on those. And so it further reduces the area that could potentially be up for redevelopment, down the road. And then I have my contact information here. So I can answer any questions.
We can count those? Is that, like, if you're zoning an area that includes wetland parcels, it's still...
You're not penalized for having an area that has wetlands in it. Because there's only...
So theoretically, we could zone an
Wetland.
entire wetland area and pretend that we're complying with...
So that's where it gets a little tricky. You would have to have some area that's not wetlands, which is why the town sort of chose this area, because there is essentially some development, Hornstra Farm, the single-family homes, the land that's going to the 40B development, that could essentially, in theory, 20, 30, 40 years from now, one of those homeowners is like, I don't want to live in my single-family home anymore. I want to sell and sort of build, multifamily housing. Probably a long shot. Could happen, maybe. It's potential. So that could be counted as future development. There are a number of communities that are achieving compliance through what's referred to as paper compliance. They're sort of complying based on the theory of MBTA communities, knowing that they're not going to build anything
What
as
was
part
the
of
term
it.
you just used for that?
Paper compliance.
Oh, okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
it's a planner term.
I'm
so
blind in my left ear, so I apologize.
there are a number of municipalities that are zoning areas that have shopping malls on them, shopping centers, grocery stores, big box retailers, which is not going to get torn down for multifamily housing anytime soon, if ever. But they're complying because essentially, in theory, you could build up to 15 units per acre in those areas. And lack of a better term, the town of East Bridgewater is trying a similar strategy of sort of being compliant in sort of the spirit of compliance without sort of the threat, I think, of any development coming down the pipe in the foreseeable future.
Excuse me.
That makes sense. No, I mean, I thought when the issue came up last time, it was sort of a hot button issue.
Yep, very contentious. I was at town meeting.
But, I mean, we're not directly on any of the commuter rail or any other commuter. So, I mean, I don't see a giant, complex going up solely due to that. You're not going to have the stuff that's jumping up around Abington, for instance.
Yep.
But, no, I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, I live in Whitman. And Whitman, they were one of the early adopters. They adopted MBTA communities during the spring town meeting schedule last year. And, there is opportunity to, I think, for some multifamily housing around the MBTA station in Whitman with some of the underutilized sort of commercial buildings that are there, some of the underutilized factory buildings. But the strategy that Whitman used, as well as some other communities, is targeting 40B development in those areas. And so Whitman took a stand to say, well, if we have no real sort of opportunity to push back against 40B development, we can at least carve out a zone where we can drive most of it. So it's not going in other areas in town. We can sort of prioritize where we want or where we think multifamily housing fits best. Now, East Bridgewater is probably not going to see the size and scale of 40B development that Whitman or Abington or some of these other communities are seeing, but I know there's one that's sort of in the middle of this, and so essentially you provide the zone where this 40B development is going to be going, and then you can sort of get the benefit of having that there, where you have, like, that can be where the multifamily housing is, so therefore you don't have multifamily housing popping up other places.
What makes you think that East Bridgewater would be spared the 40B growth that you just indicated in the other towns, Abington, Whitman?
Well, I think it's largely based off of, from a planning standpoint, amenities. So East Bridgewater Abington and Whitman are served by the MBTA. There is, access to major routes and throughways. Young families, when they're deciding where to go, might choose certain communities over others. I think where MBTA communities for East Bridgewater could potentially make sense is providing what's referred to as missing middle housing. That term's thrown around a lot, but essentially what it means is having housing stock where seniors looking to downsize can go, young families can go, essentially providing housing opportunities where someone who's born in East Bridgewater, if they decide to sort of grow up in East Bridgewater, start a family, and then sort of like carry through their lives and end their lives sort of like in East Bridgewater, they have the opportunity through the entire pathway of their sort of lives, sort of age in place, age in community. Right now, if you're not a homeowner, it's really hard to sort of like, do that journey in one community because you're sort of locked out of a lot of because the housing stock isn't there. And so having, different size home ownership opportunities, different size rental opportunities provides people the opportunity to sort of live
So
there.
the missing middle that you
Yep.
you use there, now, the stock, if you will.
Yep.
Now, is that mainly made up of multifamily?
So, you mean in terms of currently? So a majority of housing stock currently in East Bridgewater is single family
Correct.
residential. Missing middle is essentially anything between two families and let's say 5 or 6 units. I think what would fit best maybe in East Bridgewater, and you have similar scale housing to this, is sort of like the 2 and 3 families. Which
So the missing
which is
middle does not refer to any single housing regardless of scale,
Nope.
size.
Nope.
Missing
Multifamily
middle
just
is
refers to more than
multifamily.
one unit. So a 2-family is multifamily, 20-unit building is multifamily. It's anything more than one. And you have a lot of 2 and 3 families in East Bridgewater currently.
And I apologize if you
Yep.
answered this, but just for adjacent MBTA communities.
Yep.
Where we've got, the number, is that map the same for an adjacent, for a community with that hosts a transportation hub?
You mean in terms of the numbers, the calculation?
Correct. Are we
So-
the same, or is it different?
It's different.
It is different. So there would be a greater number than 14% on a non-adjacent MBTA community.
Yeah, so for example, Whitman, which is serviced by the MBTA, their multifamily housing capacity was 868 units.
What's that in relationship to?
What is that, 20%
Okay.
of their units, I think. If you're a community that has sort of rapid transit, so red line, green line, or whatever, outside of Boston, that's 25%. So Brookline, I think, their compliance number is over 1,000 units. And so it's all based off of sort of like your adjacency to an MBTA service.
That
So East
14%
Bridgewater has
apply to-
14%. Plimpton has, their multifamily unit capacity is, I think, 53 or 55 units.
Okay, so-
Because they're sort of like, a smaller community.
But just to be clear, on my end, to get to the 750 unit number, we're applying the 14% to the 5,200 existing single-family homes in East
Yep,
Bridgewater.
14% of your 2020 year-round housing stock was sort of incorporated into that calculation.
And that 750 number is a raw number. It does not include or exclude any existing multifamily units.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have more questions or want more information, I invite you to come to the town forum on the 23rd.
Oh, yeah, no, that's already booked.
Much more
but
detail.
The, your slide deck there, Is that something that we can
Yep,
get a
I'll
copy
certainly
of?
share it so
Send
you, you have it.
Sandra, and
Yep,
then
like-
she'll.
and my contact information's there. If you have any questions following this meeting, you can certainly reach out.
And then I'm assuming that you're going to have additional slides and additional information for the meeting in April?
Yep, as well as
Just-
handouts and also
Okay.
more detailed information.
All right, can board members get a preview of that before?
Of course.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. All right, so next, we do have one,
So we have
one
discussions.
topic.
So we do have a betterment loan agreement for 230 Walnut Street for Brian and Allison Smith, and the total amount of $41,181.60 that I'm looking for the board to make a motion of approval on.
All right, and that's the agreement?
That's the betterment loan agreement, yes.
Okay. And everything is complete?
Everything is complete.
All right. I would make a motion to approve the betterment loan agreement for, you said 29 Walnut?
I'm sorry, 230
Oh.
Walnut?
230 Walnut. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All right, and then now, we are going to, in one single vote, vote to close the open meeting and open an executive session, from which we will not return.
We will not
At least tonight.
Yes.
Do I have or I entertain a motion to end the open meeting and proceed into executive session?
We'll make that motion.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We will close today's open meeting. Our next meeting, we're potentially moving to May 8th? Is that what we're,
5, 6, the 7th, Wednesday, the 7th.
Wednesday the 7th? Okay, so right now we have it scheduled for May 5th. We're tentatively rescheduling that one for Wednesday, May 7th.
Yes.
All right.